Peter, it seems like the goalposts keep getting moved when it comes to the transitory inflation relief, if you will. The Fed obviously took steps last week to roll back some of its QE and other easy monetary policy, but will that really have any effect on the pressures that we're feeling now, or is that all too little too late?
Well, first of all, they're still doing quantitative easing, even if they're doing slightly less of it. And of course, this is just temporary. They're going to back up the truck and do even more QE because they just passed the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. You've got another one that's even larger, Build Back Better, whatever they're calling it. That one is going to pass. So where's all the money going to come from to pay for all this government spending? They're not getting it from higher taxes, so they're going to get it all from the Fed. And the Fed is going to have to expand its asset purchase program to buy up all these bonds that are going to be sold to finance all this spending.
And the White House, you make some interesting points about what the administration is doing here, because the White House has made meager attempts to rein in the rising costs for Americans. And one of the big aspects here has been rising fuel costs. So they've even called on OPEC to increase oil output to stabilize rising gas prices in the U.S. But on the other hand, their message tends to be that the economy recovered too fast, is just doing too well. And that's why we're having all of this crazy inflation. What do you make of that comment?
Yeah, first of all, they want OPEC to produce more, but they want domestic oil and gas companies to produce less. We need to produce our own oil, not beg the OPEC nations to produce more. But you're absolutely right on the whole concept of inflation, and the idea that it's somehow the price we pay for prosperity. This is nonsense. I mean, governments have been trying to rationalize and blame the public for inflation, for decades. It's not about the economy being too strong. It's actually about the economy being too weak. And because the economy is so weak, we're printing all this money. And that is the source of the problem. We're producing money, not stuff. And so the price of the stuff is going up. Meanwhile, we are importing record amounts of stuff. We have never imported more products than we're importing right now. But despite this surge in imports, prices are still going up because the economy is so weak that we can't produce enough even to fill that gap with record imports.
And Peter, I always like to think of myself as a solutions-oriented person, and we tend to talk about all the problems and why it's getting worse. But at this point, is there any solution to these problems when we're this deep into it?
Well, there are no politically acceptable solutions. The solution is to stop the presses. The Fed has to go cold turkey on QE, not just try to taper it. In fact, we need to reverse the process, go back to quantitative tightening. The Fed needs to shrink its balance sheet, withdraw money from circulation, allow interest rates to rise right now, not hold them at zero. And of course, that means the government has to start slashing spending. Not only can't we have the infrastructure bill or the Build Back Better bill, we need to start getting rid of spending that's already happening. The government is spending too much money. And the stock market's going to have to come down. The real estate market's going to have to come down. A lot of bubbles are going to have to deflate if we're going to address the inflation problem. But unfortunately, none of that's going to happen. And so the inflation problem is going to get much, much worse. And that means the average American has a huge problem that he's going to have to live with and potentially deal with if they can.
Absolutely. And Peter, I want to go back to something you were talking about earlier, because you were talking about the tax burden just a little bit. And I happened to be on your Twitter account earlier, and I noticed something that you tweeted out, which was basically saying that instead of trying to, just tax billionaires, that what you should send the tax is essentially when they're buying luxury goods for themselves, when they're spending money on themselves. And I know we're showing that on the screen right now. Peter, why do you think that would work to kind of at least help the Treasury to get some funds in there?
Well, that is the best way to tax, is on, excise taxes, sales taxes, or things like that. But if you want billionaires to pay taxes, then have higher sales taxes on the things that billionaires like to buy. I mean, I'm not sure how much revenue ultimately you're going to raise. I mean, you're certainly going to raise revenue if you tax, yachts and private jets and stuff like that when people rent them or when they buy them. But you're not going to get it through the wealth tax, because that's unconstitutional. Also trying to redefine income and claiming that unrealized gains constitute income, that's unconstitutional also. But the other point I was trying to make is don't begrudge the billionaires for the billions that they earned and that they don't spend. Because when billionaires earn their money, they're helping the economy grow, they're helping to produce goods and services, they're creating jobs. It's only when they use their wealth for themselves, right, when they actually spend it on things to enjoy, that's when they're starting to, reap the rewards of their labor. In the meantime, they're allowing their wealth to benefit everybody other than themselves because the wealth is out there contributing to economic growth. So don't tax the wealthy when they accumulate their wealth, and as they're earning it, wait until they start to spend it and enjoy it for themselves, because prior to that, they're basically acting like public benefactors, because this money is doing much better good for the economy than when you give it to government. So if the government just raises taxes on billionaires, and money that billionaires otherwise would have invested ends up being sent to the government, that is a huge loss for the country, because the government is a much worse steward of capital than the entrepreneurs who earn it. And money invested in the private sector does far more to help the economy than money spent by bureaucrats.
Goldman Sachs actually warned inflation will get worse before it gets better as we continue to see supply issues coupled with rising energy prices. Do you consider that a valid claim, considered these latest numbers?
Well, I think they're half right. I think it's going to get worse before it gets much worse.
Please elaborate, Peter.
Well, I mean, the inflation pipeline is pretty full. In fact, if you look at the PPI numbers that came out today, in the first 10 months of the year, producer prices are up 8.3%. Annualize that for the full year, and that's 10% increase, which is quite a bit larger, I think. Consumer prices are up maybe about 6% during the same time period. So that means companies are absorbing a lot of the price increases, and I think they've been reluctant to pass them on because they've been hoping that the Fed was right and that the inflation is transitory. But I think as they realize that the Fed was wrong and that inflation is here to stay, not only are they going to be passing on the rate or the price increases next year, but they're going to pass on this year's increases that they have been holding off on. So I think we're going to get a double barrel in 2022, which means that consumer prices are going to move up a lot more next year than they did this year.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information, and it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3,000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where do you start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really, really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.